Now, we kind of cheated here because I told you there's just those two strategies, but there's actually a bunch of other strategies you can play against tit for tat. And it's worth thinking through, how do you compute a best response to some finite state strategy? So tit for tat is a finite state strategy, and then it has these these two states, and the strategy is expressed in terms of transitions between those two states. But in general, if we have some kind of finite state strategy like tit for tat, how do we figure out how to maximize our own reward in the face of playing against that strategy? So in this picture here that I drew, the states are labeled with the opponent's choice, the finite state strategy's choice. Okay. The edges, that's in black. The edges, and labeled in green here, are labeled with our choice. So, for example, if we're in this state, if our opponent is in this state, we have a choice. We can either cooperate or defect on this round. So the green arrows tell us how that will impact the state of the opponent. And then these red numbers, I just added the information about, well, I know that if the opponent is about to cooperate and I choose to cooperate, I can just look up in the payoff matrix that that's a -1 for me. All right? Agreed? So I just annotated all these edges, all these choices with these extra numbers. So one of the things that's cool about this is, unlike just the payoff matrix representation that we had before, our choice impacts the payoff, which is the same as that, but it also impacts the future decisions of the opponent. And that gives us this structure here, and also says that this is maybe a little slightly harder thing to figure out because of the fact that we can't just maximize the number. We actually have to think about where that's going to lead us in the future as well.
So two things then. One, I was always fond of saying that the matrix was all that you needed, but that really only made sense when you were just playing once.
Yes, that's right.
Right. And two, I look at this and it's a finite state machine, but you know what else it looks like to me? It looks like an MDP.
Excellent. It is indeed an MDP. Now, in this case, my opponent's finite state strategy is deterministic, so it's a deterministic MDP. But it's a discounted MDP. Gamma is playing the role of the discount factor. The entries from the payoff matrix are playing the roles of rewards. Our action is playing the choice of our action. And the opponent's internal state structure is playing the role of our states. So it's an MDP. And so how do we figure out what an optimal strategy is against a finite state strategy?
We solve the MDP.
Yeah, exactly. So any method for solving an MDP can then be used to actually compute the strategy. So what is the strategy going to look like? It's going to be a mapping from states of the opponent to action choices for us.
Right. But that's fine because, I mean, a state doesn't have to be your state. It's just what matters. So what matters in this case is what the opponent's going to do.
Right. So now what are the strategies that could be meaningful against tit for tat? So we could, if we cooperate, then we're going to stay in this state, and it's always going to be the right thing to do to cooperate. So always cooperate is one. If we defect, now we have a choice again. So we could defect from this state, which would cause us to defect forever. So always defect is another one. But what's the other thing that could happen?
Well, we could tit for tat ourselves.
Well, sorta. I mean, so we could defect. So we could defect against cooperate, but cooperate against defect, which would actually cause us to do DC, DC, DC. So those are the only. Oh, I see. No, you're right. I'm not sure how to say it, but the policy is defect when you're in this state and cooperate when you're in this state. But the effect of that is to go back and forth against tit for tat.
Right.
Basically take this loop here. And those are the only policies that matter. And in this case, we worked out that always cooperate is good against tit for tat if it has a high discount factor, and always defect is better if you have a low discount factor. But we can get that for real by actually solving the MDP.
Right, and that makes sense. And the reason those are the only three, let me see if I get this right. The reason those are the only three that make sense is because if you think of this as an MDP, then it has no history. So when you're in C, there's really only two choices, and when you're in D, there's only really two choices. So if you look at the way you've drawn it, you either stay where you are in C or D, or you take the loop. And those are really the only three options, because the rest of them would require you remember what you did, a time step or two ago. And there's no way to do that in an MDP, at least not as you've written it.
Well, there's a way to do it. It just would never be better than doing it this way. So an MDP always has a Markov deterministic optimal policy.
Right.
So we only need to consider those.
I think that's the same thing that I was trying to say, but with different words.
Okay.